Welcome back to the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth and successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falash, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. It's finally January 16th, and you know what that means. After weeks of dropping hints, today's the big day because we get to let you in on the secret we've been gatekeeping since the new year kicked off. And if you caught our first two episodes of 2025 on equity solutions and fractional COO support, where we started breadcrumbing you a little bit, I know you've been on the edge of your seat waiting for today's announcement. So, all kidding aside, let's get to the big news. Today, in the spirit of optimizing your practices and developing and achieving the excellence our clients come to us for, Polaris Healthcare Partners is proud to announce the launch of Polaris Clinical Coaching. Yep, you heard me right, Polaris Clinical Coaching. And here with me today to tell us all about it are three of my teammates. Two of which I'll introduce to you momentarily, because what fun would this be without a little more suspense? And one you know really well, who's been behind the mic and on stage many, many times, and that's our founder and CEO, Diwakar Sinha. Diwakar, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year. So before we introduce our two new teammates, can you share with our listeners exactly what Polaris Clinical Coaching is?
Yeah, we are really excited to launch this as part of an evolution. As you know, when we first launched Polaris a couple years back, we've been extremely focused on the business side of the operations of it. And as we go into it, Polaris Clinical Coaching is the one-on-one doctor development of side-by-side, peer-to-peer, engaging, providing confidence to doctors to enhance their clinical skill set. There's a big vacuum in the market of doctors where their clinical skill set is and where they're looking to grow beyond where they're at. We've looked at the market. There's not really good doctor-to-doctor development, and with this, this is going to be on-site. This is similar to our executive coaching, fractional COO support, which is on-site. And this is going to be an on-site doctor-to-doctor development. I'll let the doctors go through that we have and what that's going to look like more on for the clients. But this is going to be on-site doctor development and helping them develop into the next level of doctors.
Oh, that's great. And you used a perfect word there, a vacuum in the market. I know as a hygienist, clinical coaching is, it's a little more prevalent out there. And having been in hygiene for 20 years, there's plenty of advice, there's great coaching, but there isn't that need met for docs. So I'm super excited, and this will go a long way toward helping practices, hit and achieve what they're looking to achieve. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our two newest Polaris team partners and incredible clinical coaches, Dr. Steve Giannoutsos and Dr. Vivek Solanki. We are so excited that you're here with us today, and even more so for what's in store for our clients. Welcome, doctors. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
So, Steve, why don't I start with you? Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself first?
Yes. First of all, Happy New Year to my team members here, Jamie, Vivek, and Diwakar. Happy New Year to all of our listeners out there in the virtual world. And it's a beautiful, beautiful day today. So my name is Evstathios Giannoutsos, but my friends, and you all are my friends, call me Steve. I am a orthodontist. I've been practicing orthodontics for almost 20 years now. It's crazy to say that. I started practicing orthodontics shortly after finishing dental school in 2005. In fact, I was working 2 weeks after my license. So I love this profession. It's something I've started and haven't stopped doing since then. When I finished my orthodontic residency, I went on to do craniofacial and special needs orthodontics. And that was a program with an emphasis on interdisciplinary care in a hospital setting, focusing primarily on surgical cases, whether they were surgery as a function of a disease process, an injury, or really for us, it was an emphasis on the cleft cases, children with craniofacial and cleft abnormalities. And when I completed my fellowship, I received one of what I believe are only two subspecialties in dentistry. One of them is maxillofacial prosthetics, and the other is in craniofacial and special needs orthodontics. So we actually, the team I was with, we wrote the law, pushed it through New York, and got that as a subspecialty. And I'm happy to say that all of the major institutions in the world are recognizing this now, and the top clinical facilities have an emphasis on this kind of clinical care. Since then, I've been working. I've done everything from starting de novos. I've started 4 de novo practices. I've done it in a pediatric setting. I've done it in a straight orthodontic setting. I've done it as part of a large interdisciplinary multi-specialty group practice. And I've also built a large clinical and administrative team that's primarily focused on ortho-only standalone offices. So we've experienced all of the pains and all of the trials and tribulations and great successes that all of our listeners either have experienced or hope to experience. And I'm super excited about this opportunity to share some of those things that I've learned, along with my colleague Vivek, with our listeners in the future to help them optimize their clinical outcomes and their experience for their doctors, their patients, and the parents who come and receive orthodontic care in particular. So thank you.
We're so excited. Yeah, we're so excited to have you. And, I know a bit about you from your work with Polaris, in the past as a client as well. And, I really, you have some great achievements on your resume. And, we're glad to have you here with us today. And I can't wait for all of the topics and pain points that you're going to share with our clients, because you've been there too. So when you walked in their shoes, I think that makes you 10 times more impactful when you can share your own experience because you've been there. So
I fully
thank you.
agree. Very excited to share that.
All right. Very good. All right, Vivek, how about you? Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi. Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Vivek Solanki. I am a boarded periodontist. I graduated dental school from Howard University in 2011. Followed by a 2-year general practice residency at Einstein Medical Center in Philadelphia. And then I took my journey all the way over to the West Coast and did 3 years at the West Los Angeles VA for perio specialty. It's kind of a little bit devastating what's happening in LA right now. Hope everybody is okay in Southern California and LA.
Absolutely.
And so I stayed out there for about a decade. And I did a numerous amount of clinical practice. I worked in a large DSO setting. I've worked in specialty practice, solo specialty practice. But then I found myself gravitating more towards group practice. And so after engaging with Polaris actually helped me with sales side. I had a very great opportunity there. And I decided to move back to Florida, where I am now. I spend my time between Florida and Maryland, where I'm predominantly in the group practice arena. And that's my background. It's just been helping general dentists grow and then helping those groups bring in the multi-specialty model. I think for me, it was very unique because I grew up watching my mother and father. They're both retired dentists. So I had a very good understanding of what general dentistry was like growing up. And then after specializing and spending the time inside the general dentistry office versus the solo specialty model, I was able to help my general dentist colleagues grow. And what I found by that is by them growing, they knew what to refer to specialty. They had fulfillment in their careers. They met their goals. And so that's predominantly where I've spent my time in the clinical practices of group practice with general dentistry and multi-specialty models.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And again, kind of diving into your history, in clinical practice and business growth. And with us at Polaris, you have so much to share in a very impactful but different way than Steve does. So I think this is going to be a great benefit to our clients. And you guys just have so much experience to share that, no doubt people are going to benefit from that. So we're excited to have you.
Thank you.
But yeah, Diwakar, I want to kind of jump back to you. Can you, there's a fair amount of coaching, but as we talked about, this is markedly different, being that this is doctor to doctor, peer to peer, really hands-on coaching. Can you tell listeners why Polaris is going into clinical coaching? Like, why now?
Yeah, I think as I said earlier, there's a vacuum in the market, right? And number one, we've been asked this question. Our clients have been on the business side as they've been growing the business. They're looking for business excellence, business execution, right? And when we work with them, we're working with them on revenue growth, working with their operations team, working with the principal doctors to grow their top line. Work with their executive team to grow EBITDA. I think you've been on the podcast. We focus on these aspects of it, but there's a clinical component, right? That's missing, between that. And we can work with the executive team. We can work with the principal to say, hey, you got to work with your doctors to grow the revenue, grow the patient engagement. But we're limited to that. And the principals are fathers, mothers, husbands, wives. And they don't have the time sometimes, right? And some of these doctors are 2 locations, 5 locations, 10 locations, 25 locations, and they are CEOs, they're chief clinical officers, and they can only go so many locations to do so many things within their practice, and they don't have the time. And I say chief, they might be the chief clinical officer, and they are talking to doctors, but they don't have the time to go out on site. I talked about on-site clinical coaching. And go out and develop their doctors, and develop them from producing $700,000 in adjusted production on a general dentist basis, and get them to about $1 million, $2 million, to be good producing doctors. And I'm going to focus on some other aspects of it in a second, and I'll let Vivek talk on his side, and then Dr. Steve talk on his side. That's we're pushing. With the ops team, where Aiden works on fractional COO, and we're going to get revenue growth on the operation side, and work on EBITDA improvement, but that's going to have some level of a glass ceiling on it.
Yeah.
The other aspect of that engagement is the clinical aspect that has to be there, of doctor development, of doctor mentorship. And when we go into practices, these associates are looking for doctor mentorship. We have a great product, Associate Equity. That's been very successful across the country, and we have doctors earning equity in a lot of our platforms that we've implemented it. And doctors are going from producing 700,000, 800,000, and 900,000, and we want these associate partners to earn more equity in these practices, and we want that to be through doctor development. And see these doctors become more successful. But there's a third component of that. It's patient care, patient engagement, and be able to provide better quality of care, and have that level of success on the patient side, right? And if we could, provide that level of confidence from the provider level at the local practice level, that he or she feels like, hey, I can treat this patient today and provide this level of care today, or provide this treatment plan and get this done for this patient today, then that's great from a child level, from a parent level, from a patient level, and that's great. And the same thing goes from orthodontic care. If we can get this patient into brackets and get this patient debonded faster, and get into Invisalign, or whatever the care that's Steve's going to talk about, then that is an amazing process, right? And to get that. So I think, and you're going to see us go into other healthcare verticals, right? I mean, that's, we're Polaris Clinical Coaching. This is only our 2 verticals we're going in now. And we want to impact these 2 sides now, but we're going to be going to other verticals as we move forward. But our why is to, impact and integrate the business side with the clinical side, impact patient care, and maximize shareholder value, right? And I think if we can do that successfully, and improve the lives of the associates, the patients, the operations team that we work with, the principals we work with in these practices, and show that everything is integrated within a business and that they all have to work together really well. And that at the end of the day, if they're all integrated really well, that the patient sees an amazing experience. Like this is for us, like is the final, one of the final touches. I don't want to say final touch, one of the final touches, because we have other things in 2026 coming down
Absolutely.
the pipe. Let's not talk about those today. But that's our why, right? And the why is going to continue to move forward for us. But that's our why for now. And of course, but those are the things. So.
Yeah, for sure. And, truly, and we all know on this call, and the docs, of course, as well, you can't unwind clinical and business. As much as you can mentally separate those things, your patient care impacts your practice in a number of ways. And you mentioned something earlier about confidence, Diwakar. That's something that, we all come out of school and we're ready to practice, but we kind of have this narrow mindset of how we're going to do that because we really haven't been, other than in school clinical, in a certain process under the supervision of our instructors, how that's going to play out in the real world. And you really get out there in solo practice and then into groups. And that opens a huge door for opportunity in terms of clinical treatment, leadership development, case presentation, and patient care overall. So I think this is really exciting, and I can't wait to get into it. All right. So, Vivek, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us what you're going to be doing for our clients?
Yeah. So Diwakar actually brought up some really good points. I actually learned a lot of the top line, EBITDA, how to change those levers and turn the knobs on a business from a byproduct of what I did clinically. See, as spending time in a group practice or with the general dentist, everything was always number one about what can we do the best for our patients. And that could be a denture for somebody, that could be an implant, all on 4 procedure, but it was really understanding like what are the tools that we have in a dental practice that we can help this patient with, and then providing the best service for that patient from a clinical standpoint. So for me, when I hear these numbers and I hear these words and EBITDA and what we're payroll and how do we get associates to develop more, it really only comes from one place. From my lens, it comes from helping doctors get better, providing better care, and helping them advance in their clinical careers. So that's where I'm going to be starting to begin with in these practices. An ideal situation would be looking at what type of care are they providing, and why is there, if there's a desire to learn more advanced dentistry, implant dentistry, is there a way to minimize periodontal disease in a practice, or a group practice who has achieved a significant amounts of advanced growth for their general dentist is now looking to bring in a multi-specialty model to then make the life cycle easier for their patient and not having to refer them out. There's so many different levels of how to help a group practice grow, how to help an associate develop in the future. But it all starts from what is being done clinically. How is case acceptance? How are they developing trust with their patients that these doctors can execute on that treatment? And then bringing them back and putting them in a recall program where those patients are then going to refer other patients to them, changing the entire dynamic of that practice and that relationship that the patient has with the doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. Building that trust between doctor and patient, that leads to not only, doc retention, but patient retention as well. So overall, a great place to start. Excited to get in with you one-on-one to talk about some of these topics as we go forward with the podcast and the business, of course. Steve, same
absolutely.
question to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say that I'm absolutely enjoying this call, and I was spending some time talking to my buddy Vivek, and we're like two peas in a pod. We didn't know each other very well. We knew of each other because of our relationships with Polaris on the consulting side for quite some time, and I'd heard about him, and I hope that you guys have said some nice things about me. That said, we've been spending some time talking, and we really share a very similar mindset. And so something he mentioned last night in a call that we had was that we were really interested in looking under the hood of practices to understand their clinical situation, right? The first thing that we want to do, and part of this is because of the way that he's been practicing and I've been practicing all these years as a periodontist. He's kind of the foundation, right? There's no teeth without a good periodontium. We all know this.
Exactly.
The thing that
Amen.
we all hear in orthodontics, right? These guys are our foundation guys.
Yeah.
And the orthodontist is often kind of like the quarterback or the architect. He or she thinks about how things move. That's a very simplistic view of it on an individual patient within a mouth. And so, given our two experiences, the fact that he does this as a specialty, I do what I do as orthodontic and as an orthodontist, and we've both worked in these kinds of settings in group practices. I was quarterbacking the cleft care, and we see these kids from literally 6 days till they're 66 years old. I mean, we quarterback that care all the way through. We realized that, and I think he said this yesterday, that we want to be who we needed as we were doing this early on, and we missed some of those opportunities because I think Diwakar mentioned this earlier, and all of you guys have mentioned this. We become incidental CEOs in our practices. We become incidental CCOs, right? Chief Clinical Officers. And we're also husbands and fathers and wives and sons and daughters. And it's hard to manage all those things. And often we spend all this time working on the top line stuff, the EBITDA, the production, payroll stuff. And we don't do this on purpose, but we kind of forget that everything is built on our foundation. Our why is the clinical of the patient. So that was kind of our vision, right? And what we want to do is we want to help these doctors move. And you said this before, Jamie, from competence, which almost everybody has, to proficiency. Proficiency in diagnosing, proficiency in treatment planning, proficiency in executing, proficiency in managing the patient life cycle, because it really truly is all about that patient. And if we can help, and I know we will help these doctors to do this, to grow their practices with this kind of a mindset, which is the mindset that we ended up ultimately falling into, we're going to help them grow practices and build a life that they don't want to retire or vacation from, because they're on the path to wealth. We're going to do all of this while solving for the end user. In the orthodontic setting, it's the adult who's taking care of his or her children, but never really themselves, and now is going to focus on maybe aesthetics or preparing to get some implants and really restore function, which is what Vivek can help them with. And on the orthodontics, it's really to give those children and adults that smile that gives them their confidence to go out into the world and really be happy about what they've got. And so that's where we are. I think one final thing that I want to say before going back to you, two very important things. We're turning, and I've mentioned this in other podcasts with you guys, is we're turning our docs into the air traffic control. We don't want pilots anymore. We want them to be able to see that entire airport and manage that whole thing. And that's
great analogy.
I think is really exceptional at. I know he's going to offer a lot to the generalists and the surgeons. That's one. And the second thing is, we're really, when it comes to the business side, we're going to say that's a question for Polaris Consulting. We're going to be talking about anything having to do with clinical care on the clinical coaching. And we're super excited about it.
Oh, yeah, so are we.
That's a great point.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you talked about something that, we don't consider sometimes when you go into clinical practice, you graduate, who's your mentor? Who's teaching you these things? And you incidentally become a CEO and beyond that, in addition to your personal life and managing all those things. I love that analogy, the air traffic controller. That makes perfect sense. And I know it will to a lot of our listeners as well. So Diwakar, I want to go back to you for a minute. We kind of talked about the what we're going to be doing. We've volleyed that back and forth between the doctors here, but who's a good candidate? Who's going to benefit the most from Polaris Clinical Coaching?
Yeah. So obviously we're going to, I don't want to approach this from a business lens, not from a clinical lens, because we have two clinicians here. But, I think one is going to be somebody that's looking to get more into a CEO seat, right? I'll kind of take one bucket at a time here, and then I'll kind of go into it. So if somebody's looking to kind of scale themselves out clinically, go into more of a CEO seat, is to bring in a clinical coach within their business to help develop their doctors. That's one, and that's across the platform on an orthodontics basis, and then on a general specialty basis. So I look at Vivek as a general specialty. So if you're looking to bring in specialty within your business, that's where we're going to bring in Vivek, and then orthodontics on a orthopedo, implementing that within your practice and kind of growing that side of it. So that's one aspect of it. And then I'm kind of going to go through, on a business lens, measurable aspects of it. So these are measurable aspects to kind of think about, but I don't want to box these things as immeasurable, because there's a whole wide issues that our audience members might be going through that they need to be thinking about. But these are just easy measurables that people might want to think about within that. And please call us so we can evaluate with our coaches what is actually happening within your business to see if it's a fit. And if it's not a fit, I think a lot of our audience members know that we'll just tell you, we're not a fit for you. And that there's nothing wrong with that, because we don't want to have on-site visits and if it's not making sense for you. So, on a general specialty basis, is if your general dentists are doing anywhere from $600,000 to $900,000 in clinical production, evaluating the treatment plans that are happening within your practice, and looking at your demographics within your practice to see, okay, does it, can we develop your doctors to the next level, right? And what does that look like? So understanding what that looks like, bringing a specialty within it, and from a general basis, our goal is to develop as doctors by about 50% in revenue in about an 18-24 month period. Okay, so that's our average goal coming out of this, and that's again $600,000 to $900,000 in average production. So $900,000 doctor, our goal will be to get to about $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and that's our goal. On the orthodontic side, so looking at your overall cycle and looking at D-bonds, looking at ortho starts, looking at overall the plan trajectory of doctor development within the overall plan, and also with pediatrics, and so, okay, how can we integrate overall patient care between pedo and ortho within a platform within the business, and continue to grow and scale that effectively across the platform, and allow the principal, again, I go back to the CEO seat, allow the principal to continue to make aggregation decisions as far as de novo and acquisitions effectively, and onboard within the business new practices and new doctors in the business. Because as they're acquiring new practices or doing de novos, they're also doing recruitment and adding new doctors. So as they're adding new doctors, what's their doctor development plan within that of training those new doctors and mentoring new doctors? And so in that situation, if we're onboarded as their doctor development plan, then Vivek or Steve can be working with those doctors as part of the, hey, by the way, we have a clinical coach. As you're coming on board, we're going to introduce you to Steve or Vivek as part of our onboarding plan, and they're going to work with you. And here's your doctor development plan and mentorship plan. And again, great thing is if these guys are being developed, they're seeing the mentorship. This is the competitive advantage they would have in the practices with the clients that are engaging a clinical coach within their practices. That would be their competitive advantage in the market compared to the practices that don't have a clinical coach within their practices. And again, as doctors are coming out of dental schools and residencies, they're looking to say, okay, how can I, these guys are coming out with $400,000, $500,000 in student loan debt. And, their monthly obligations might be $5,000 to $9,000 a month of student loan debt. These guys need to produce in personal income $250,000 to $300,000 in personal income on the bottom end. That means they have to produce $800,000 to $1 million in clinical dentistry, depending on their comp plan. And so we're here to support that success, for those associates and those principal doctors in those practices.
Well, and that's a great way to kick it into high gear as well. Have a conversation with us, see what fits, because of course nothing is one size fits all, but to hit the ground running is a huge competitive advantage. For sure. Well, Diwakar, Vivek, Steve, wonderful having you here today. Excited for things to come. Diwakar actually kind of hinted at a couple of topics that we're going to be talking about here on some future podcasts, but I won't give it away. Again, appreciate having you here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for having us. We're excited.
Yeah, so are we. Ready to roll. So once again, thanks for joining us for this special episode of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast. Now, we gave you a 10,000-foot view of Polaris Clinical Coaching today, but there's a lot more to come, as you heard. In these upcoming episodes, each of the docs are going to be chatting with me about topics that keep their peers up at night and how their coaching can not only help solve those pain points, but, help grow that clinical scope of your team and, of course, practice revenue at the end of the day. To get in touch with us about Polaris Clinical Coaching, or if you want to schedule some time to learn more about any of our many expert advisory services, you can just drop us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, or you can reach us on the website at www.polarishealthcarepartners.com. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast.